And welcome everyone to another edition of the MCU Review. I am one of your MCU Review hosts, Elliot Serrano, joined by my shaken not heard co-host below me if you're watching on the live stream, Dave Pinto. How you doing, Dave?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. Ran around today trying to get Tom, our mixologist's Tom Jettner's drink to John Clark, who will be joining us shortly.
I assume you're successful in doing that?
Yes, he's got it. I got it to him. So he will hopefully have it on display for folks who don't know Tom Jettner.
Ooh, a little choppy on my end.
Yeah, me too.
Losing you, Elliot.
It's so funny. I am literally sitting right next to my wireless router. I'm literally right next to it right now.
It's much better right now.
Yeah.
Yes. And so my apologies. So what was I saying? I was Tom Jettner, who could not join us tonight because he is in Italy on a trip, doing things, I guess, that lawyers with attractive wives and children do. I hate him. I really do hate him. Just like I hate Dave. Dave, good-looking guy with a good-looking wife.
Not a lawyer, though.
Yeah. But he's out there. But he did make the drink for us that if you want to find out what it was and how to make it, you go to ReVU Cocktails on Instagram, instagram.com/REVU Cocktails. And if you also go to the MCU Review page, you'll find a nice little custom video that Tom made for us to share with all of you. Good evening, Lehman. Good evening, Susan. And yes, good evening, Dr. Flores. Thank you for coming back.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Oh, that's great to have you here. If you did not see the last MCU review, when Dr. Flores, who is both a psychologist and author, writer of Untamed, the Psychology of Marvel's Wolverine, a great book. I'm going to tell you, folks, this Dr. Flores did not cut corners. She consulted experts, the creator of Wolverine and Len Wein, Paul Jenkins, who would be the writer of Wolverine Origin, and a whole lot of folks who have worked on Wolverine through the years to delve into the psychology of that epic character in the Marvel Universe. We're just waiting for them to recast Wolverine for the MCU, so then that way we can have you on again, and you can just totally lose your mind at that point.
And I absolutely would. Yeah, it's been a great treat.
And here he is, without further ado, the other part of tonight's quartet, the final part of tonight's quartet, John Clark. How you doing, John?
Good. Every time I'm 30 seconds late, it's 5 minutes of waiting in limbo.
Well, you know what they say: if you're a minute late, you're a half hour late.
You're like a maitre d'. You call once and then you just move on to the next table.
But anyway, thank you. And I was relaying how we've got the drinks from Tom Jettner for tonight's show. Unfortunately, because Dr. Flores lives in Louisiana,
New Orleans,
right? I can't. We can't. I think it's illegal for us to mail you this stuff that we're drinking.
Boo, hiss, excuses.
But yeah, so I saw John earlier today to drop off his drink, and we're all set for today's discussion about the first Mystic entry into the MCU. That would be the 2016 release of Doctor Strange, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Rachel McAdams, Mads Mikkelsen, Tilda Swinton, and there is an actor who I cannot pronounce his name. I'm not even going to try. People are going to be mad at me if I mispronounce it, so I'm not going to do it. But talking about Doctor Strange, we lead off with our 2-minute MCU movie review. All our panelists have just seen the film just recently. Give us just your quick overview, a 2-minute review. Let's start with you, Dr. Flores, since you are, I'll call you our returning champion.
Yay! I like that title. This is one of my favorite MCU movies, hands down. Because it's very different, compared to the rest. I related to the character in several ways. You have someone that might be bordering on narcissism, right? We'll talk about that, I guess, in a second. Has neuropathic pain, very arrogant, gets super humbled, joins a universe that he had no intention of joining, and learns a lot of powerful lessons on the way. It's also just, eye candy galore. It's just very beautiful, to look at, and especially on the big screen when I saw it. But yeah, it's one of my at least top 3, I'd say. Love Doctor Strange.
Excellent. Dave.
I enjoyed this one more upon rewatch, I think, than I remembered enjoying it when I first saw it. I think this was actually only my second time seeing it. I think this is only the first time I'd seen it since the theaters. And I think certain aspects of the movie maybe I appreciate a bit more. Like, I believe this is the first mention in the MCU of the multiverse. There's a line in there about multiverse, which I guess you don't really come to appreciate too much later on, these last couple films especially. I think this is a movie similar to the first Iron Man, where it really kind of lives and dies by the charisma of the main actor. Again, Doctor Strange, a character that the average moviegoer, probably a really casual Marvel fan, not very familiar with. And personally, I wasn't. I knew probably the very basics about the character, but not a ton. And I think Benedict Cumberbatch is such a charismatic actor that the movie really succeeds largely because of him. Personally, and this is just personal taste, I'm not huge into all the mysticism aspect of, I guess the MCU, or I know it's a big part of it, so I'm not trying to just dismiss it, but it was never a huge, hugely appealing to me. But again, it's one of those things where if you had a lesser actor or someone maybe not as charismatic as Benedict, I wouldn't enjoy the movie as much as I do. But it is one, definitely, I think my first thoughts after finishing watching it yesterday was, wow, I enjoyed that more than I remembered when I saw it, 6 years ago when it came out. So probably not one of my favorites, but better than I remember it being.
Probably because you didn't have the stench of a Trump administration hanging over you, like most of us had when that movie was out. And John.
This is the first time I've seen it since seeing the second one, and so I had a different perspective than I had before. I've seen this many times, but it really struck me how different it was than the other one. They weren't quite creating a franchise as much as they were launching a character in this film, I think. The tone is very different. There's a lot of choices they make in this film that they then pivot away from. But I think we were talking about this when we were talking about Ant-Man. I can start to feel Marvel starting to hedge their bets and realizing they built Robert Downey Jr. into a star, and they're going to need another star sooner or later. So with Ant-Man, we got the charm of Robert Downey Jr., and with this, we get the pomposity of Tony Stark. And as we move forward, I think those two actors are really carrying the banner for everything, especially since we don't have Chadwick Boseman anymore. So there's a lot of interesting choices here. In the middle of this movie, I was thinking, wow, what would it have been like if Sam Raimi had directed this movie, if he had directed both? And then by the end of it, I was like, the story they were telling is so different that I don't think Raimi would have wanted to do this story.
Was he rumored to do this one? Or that was just hypothetical?
No, Scott Derrickson, who directed this one, was directing the second one and
Yeah.
dropped out over story concerns. Now that we've seen Multiverse of Madness, probably because they were throwing in the multiverse and all of the characters and jumping from place to place so quickly. I think he really wanted to make a sequel to that second one because there's so much buildup for Mordo, and Mordo even gets the post-credit scene. And in Multiverse of Madness, he shows up in the middle, and Doctor Strange is like, "Oh yeah, I fight Mordo a lot." And it was like, okay, you were going one place, and I think a place maybe Scott Derrickson wanted to go, and Marvel's like, "No, we're going to completely abandon that path and go down this way."
No.
If I remember correctly, when Mordo at the end says no more sorcerers, no more
too many sorcerers.
Too many sorcerers. It seemed like there was talk that they were possibly going to go down the House of M route, where he would get rid of all, just like when Wanda wanted to get rid of all the mutants, Mordo would get rid of all the magic in the MCU.
Right, and Mordo is Doctor Strange's Joker. He's Doctor Strange's Green Goblin. That's his main villain next to Dormammu, who gets a spotlight here. So going into it, you would assume as much that it was going to be about him. And I think that's one of the things maybe Scott Derrickson was planning to go in that direction. And Marvel's like, no, it's going to be America Chavez and Wanda and all this stuff we're using in other movies. And he may have had a vision for this that was just not followed through.
I don't have much new to offer outside of what everyone else has said, except for two things. I think the ending of the movie is probably evoked the original Steve Ditko comics more than anything. I remember with the big showdown with Dormammu at the end going, wow, this feels like a Lee Ditko comic. And why did they cut out the scene where Stephen Strange helps the little dog that's limping, that he puts the splint on? It's a deleted scene that if you go to Disney Plus, you can see the deleted scene where the dog that appears at one point when Strange is looking for the Ancient One, disappears for a bit, then disappears. But there's another scene, like it's a 60-second scene where you see how Strange is helping the little dog, puts a splint on him, helps him, being an actual doctor with the dog. And I'm telling you, that dog gave a great performance. In the beginning, he was limping, and then he stopped. And if I was that dog's agent, I would have complained. But that was me.
That dog got paid.
I gotta check that out.
Yeah, it's a great scene. It's the establishing thing. Is like how do you establish that a guy's a hero, that he's a good guy? Have him help a dog. Help an animal. That's how you do it. Just like we've talked about, how do you establish that the guy's bad? The villain is evil. Have him kill an animal, which everyone hates. And we're learning now that if you let the dog live, people will love you for it. Like in Prey, not an MCU film, but a movie that's gotten a lot of people talking. It was probably the best Predator movie since the first Predator. So
I thought to show your villain was a badass, he has to beat up Worf.
Well, that too.
Unless you're counting Worf as the animal of Star Trek.
Right. Or shoot Worf's dog. Anyway, I do not wish anything bad on Worf, let alone anybody's pet. So yeah. All right. So beyond that, my dog is chiming in right now. She's got her opinions on the whole thing.
Because you were just talking about dogs dying.
Yeah, really.
Vested interest.
She's like, Leon, let me out.
Yeah. For everyone who's watching us on the live stream, thank you so much. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Lehman. Thank you if you're watching us on our Facebook page, if you're watching us on our Twitch page, or watching us on our YouTube page, feel free to comment. Give us a fun comment. We will feature you on the show. That's one of the great things about watching the MCU ReVU when it live streams. You get to interact directly with each of the panelists. If you're not watching the live stream and listening to the podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you subscribe to the Caffeinated Comics podcast on Radio Misfits, the Radio Misfits Podcast Network, where every other episode of Caffeinated Comics is an MCU review. And in between the MCU reviews, or every 1 or 2 episodes between MCU reviews, you'll have John Clark and Stephen Brown with myself dropping in from time to time, talking about the news and things going on in comics and geek culture. We had a really good episode last week when we talked about Sandman. We gave a review of the Sandman series on Netflix and how closely it hewed to the comic book. So if you're into that, if you want to hear us talk about things other than just the Marvel movies, please check out the Caffeinated Comics podcast on the Radio Misfits podcast network.
And to amend that Sandman discussion, Netflix then, after we had the discussion, released 1 bonus episode, which is not something I think they've ever done with a series before. So hopefully that means that they're supporting it. I know it's doing really well and that we'll get more seasons of it because it is excellent.
1 episode, a very clever episode that used rotoscoped cats. It was like an animation type deal with the cats. And oh my God, I was rooting for the cats in this one. Human beings suck. If it told me anything.
There is really a theme in the way you are hosting this episode. I don't remember any animals in this movie. As you said, 1 was cut out.
You're like, who peed on you today? You know?
Yeah, wow.
A dog, apparently.
Dave knows where I'm coming from too. Dave and I both also work in animal welfare, so we get to see that the crappy things people can do and be. And yes, and of course his kitty cat. What's your cat's name?
Polly.
This is Polly. Wait, you have another one, right?
No, just
Polly and your gremlin. And here we go. And your doggy's name?
Lolita. This is Lolita.
Yes. Folks, if you're not watching the live stream, the video live stream, you're missing everyone showing off their pets. I know John's got a cat somewhere back there who might make
this is one of the few times he's not interrupting. So I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, he's hiding because of all of the violent language here.
And I have met Elliot's dog, and I would give him $875 if he could pick that dog up.
Oh, and there's no way that you'd be safe in keeping your money. For those who've never seen Miss Moneypenny, Lockjaw from the Inhumans, there, right there. I always wanted a dog like Lockjaw. I've got a dog like Lockjaw. So here we go. Except she can't teleport me from place to place, which would be cool. Anyway, hey, Steve, thanks for checking us out on the YouTube page. Thanks for chiming in and saying hello. Everyone's saying hello to the pets. Hello to Lolita. Hello. Let's get back into the movie, though. Dr. Flores, you made some comments about having certain things in common with Stephen Strange. Would you mind elaborating on that a little bit?
Sure. Well, one of the form of therapies that I do is called pain psychology. So I treat neuropathic pain, joint pain, different kinds of pain. And so Stephen Strange has neuropathic pain in his hands. I too have that. I have a little bit of all over neuropathic pain, not as bad as he does, or at least as far as it's portrayed. And that's kind of how I got interested in pain psychology to begin with. I used to be a marathoner, overdid it. The lower back went, then the hips, then was in pain for too long. And that's when neuropathy began. And so, when I saw this, I was like, oh, I feel you, buddy. I feel you, because it's very hard for people to conceptualize this notion that, pain patients are in pain every second of every minute that they are awake or even get woken up to the pain. And so people not in pain have a very hard time wrapping their head around that. So when they say, are you in pain? It's like, well, I'm always in pain, but sometimes it's more severe. And it really does a mind job going from fully functioning, to losing the thing that you love the most. And, in my case, I definitely loved marathoning when I could. And yes, it does a mind job. And I could only imagine what this character went through, his whole identity, You know, like his pride and joy was what he could do, and the one thing that he that he really needed is the thing that he lost. So, so yeah, that's how I relate to this character.
Yeah, I love the subtlety in that first act too, about how he's losing everything to sacrifice getting his hands back, which he doesn't. You know, the last shot of this movie, spoilers, is his hands are still shaking, even though he's mastered becoming a sorcerer. But there were always these little touches you notice, is that as he's seeing doctors upon doctors and trying more experimental methods, you see his apartment getting more and more empty, and you realize he's selling everything he owns to try to figure out this cure. And it's a slow spiral rather than what you'd expect from a comic book movie, something big and dramatic and in your face. It's a very little touch just to show that the world outside of that no longer matters to him.
Well, you know, what's true with like pain patients when they're first going through that, it's like they go through something called cognitive dissonance. You know, your belief system is not matching reality. So like when we get injured, we heal, right? And in this case, like he had chronic pain, it wasn't working. So most people, especially someone who's like accomplished or puts a lot of meaning to the thing, like let's say marathoning, I wanted to be like, you know, like 100% fine to do a marathon again. He wants a 100% cure so he could be the genius that he was. You know, so it's not just about like getting his hands back. It's about getting his identity back. So he's desperate because he didn't have anything else.
Well, I mean, you think about it, to be a neurosurgeon, I mean, you have to have perfect hand control, and even a little tremor, even the slightest tremor,
Yep.
you can't do it. You just can't do it. There's no way you can be the precision. Okay, maybe a heart surgeon. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that sort of thing. I don't know. You're working on a near microscopic level when it comes to neurosurgery. So you have to have very precise control. Plus, to the level that he had it on. I mean, we're talking, he's doing this complicated surgery while listening to music that one of his attendees is playing, and he's and saying, you know, oh, Chuck Mangione, this album, this year. Oh no, that's wrong. That's not the year he did it. No. You should check. He recorded it here and here, but it was released then. No. And that's where he has the ego to frickin' drive a sports car, you know, along a mountainside road at breakneck speeds and texting and reading a screen on his car, because he's able to process all those things that quickly at once, that he sees no risk in that. I love how in the movie, though, I remember at the beginning, they did put a disclaimer: do not text and drive.
Because yeah, stuff can happen.
If Doctor Strange can do it, I can do it.
Also, do not worship demons because it's bad for your eyes.
Dave, you said that you enjoyed this movie more this time around. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
I think part of it could be that, you know, with the first movie, I went into it with very little familiarity of. I mean, I knew who Doctor Strange was from the comics, but I had never read like an actual Doctor Strange title. And just, you know, kind of seeing the character develop and how they've portrayed him maybe a little bit more. I think we could probably all agree that there's a little bit more humor in Multiverse of Madness, or at least they've lightened him up a little bit, and kind of seeing how he's a lot more kind of like, not a stiff in this one, but he's more a jerk. He's more, you know, kind of pompous, full of himself, that sort of thing. And just, I think part of my appreciation was just, you know, sort of a compare and contrast thing of, oh, this is what he was and how he used to be in his first appearance compared to, you know, a couple appearances later in, now we're at Multiverse of Madness, and he obviously, in between we had a couple other movies, the two, Infinity War and Endgame. It kind of made me think a little bit of how Thor's portrayal changes. How the first two Thor movies he's, you know, a little bit more of a stiff. and then they bring in Taika Waititi, and the movies become a lot more kind of, I don't know, subversive, but kind of goofy and in a good way. It's silly in a good way. And I think the character benefited from that, and I think you see that. But I think also in the case of Doctor Strange, it's part of the character's development as a character as well. But I also wonder, and I'm curious what everyone's opinions about this are. Do you think the portrayal is also Marvel sort of gauging fan response or fan feedback of maybe the character would be better received if we changed how he was portrayed, if we lightened him up a little bit, or that was always the plan of part of the character evolution was to do that regardless? Curious what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a conscious effort going into this. I was thinking this is late 2016. This is around Thanksgiving 2016. This is like at the end of the Benedict Cumberbatch burst. Because, in around 2010, 2011 is when Stephen Moffat does Sherlock. That becomes a big hit. And then his intense asshole persona takes over. They put him in Star Trek. He starts making dramas. And this is, he's Smaug in The Hobbit. And he's kind of getting this reputation of being a pompous British prick and everything, and great at it. And I think that's the energy he brings to Doctor Strange. It's like, okay, we're hiring Benedict Cumberbatch, who has his persona, the same way we hired Robert Downey Jr. for his persona or Paul Rudd for his persona. But I do think there is a softening. This movie does have a sense of humor, but in tone, it's a lot more serious. There's a lot of gray skies. There's not a ton of color. Even when he's going through the multiverse, it's like dark purples and blues. It's subdued. Another thing I noticed is that Wong is a very minor character. Mm-hmm. And they figured out, because Wong's probably had as many appearances as Doctor Strange in some of the other movies like Shang-Chi and Endgame and movies that weren't his. In this, he's really a side character. And when I was watching this, as they're building up the Mordo-Strange relationship, I realized, a couple of years later, they would have just given Wong all of this part because they knew they were going to build him up. So I think they do take the ball and run with it and make changes. I also think a huge character shift for Doctor Strange comes in Infinity War, which we haven't talked about yet. But spoilers for that, where he's the one that really sets up the sacrifice when he says, I looked at 8 million different futures and we only went in one of them. And he makes the choice that seems to be the worst choice possible because he's playing the long game. He's seeing beyond himself because he knows in Infinity War, and again, we'll get to it when we get to it, but he's one of the ones that disappears from that. And he obviously knows that because he sees every single thing that's going to happen. He's not that character yet. And in Multiverse of Madness, he is. So it's a weird thing. The franchise is now Marvel because it's 6 years between Doctor Strange 1 and Doctor Strange 2. But Doctor Strange has had all of these things happen to him in other people's movies just because it's all Marvel.
And he makes appearances. Of course, he'll be in Spider-Man No Way Home. He appears in Thor. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's like, I would say, to your point, Dave, that the character in the movie in the very beginning is very close to what he was like in the comic books, and writers have struggled with the Doctor Strange character over the years. Stan Lee was not one to give you really complex characters. He Iron Man. You can do the Stan Lee better than I can, John. Just Iron Man was a
Iron Man.
He was a war profiteer, right? And
Doctor Strange, Elliot, Doctor Strange was never that popular a character. I mean, when he's in an anthology book, which he shares with Human Torch for a while, and then he shares it with Nick Fury for a while. Another character who's well known in the Marvel Universe, but has never sold well. Yeah. And you look at the history of Doctor Strange, it's this constant, his book gets canceled. A few years later, they relaunch it. His book gets canceled. A few years later, they relaunch it. It's not Spider-Man. where it's like a consistent seller throughout. So and of course, when you have a character that gets rebooted that many times, the new team is going to be like, okay, the old way didn't work. We're going to totally do it a different way. So Doctor Strange's character becomes inconsistent over the years. So you're right. There is like the only core of him is he does magic and other Marvel characters don't. So really, there is a wide berth for Benedict Cumberbatch to kind of come in and become that character.
Mind you, you could take that standard, apply it also to Iron Man. Iron Man was not a big selling character. Iron Man also had his book, come and go.
Yeah, he also started an anthology.
Yeah.
So he shared a book with Captain America in the 60s.
Yeah. But if I remember
these
correctly,
two characters have in common is like they're both supposed to be unlikable, and they're just so likable. Like both of them. That's the genius of, I think, Stan Lee's with these creation of both of these characters. You have like narcissistic tendencies, of both of them, and pompous and arrogant.
You can make an argument that Stan Lee had narcissistic tendencies.
Say what?
You can make the argument that Stan Lee also had narcissistic tendencies. So he was writing what he knew.
Yeah, I guess you could, right? You're projecting onto the page.
Yeah.
Who knows? But but like it's interesting. Like it's kind of like we'd like to see what's further in there. Like like what's behind this exterior of pompousness and being the playboy, the philanthropist, the genius, whatever, right? And just seeing like the heart, right? Proof that Tony Stark has a heart, and proof that Doctor Strange can be humbled. So,
I remember when I first saw Doctor Strange, it made me think about another movie that had a similar theme. It was The Game, starring Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. And Michael Douglas is like this hedge fund guy who's, again, also pompous. The dude's rich. He's like a Gordon Gekko type. And throughout the movie, has all these terrible things happen to him where he's getting beaten down and beaten down and beaten down. And in the beginning, you hate the guy, but by the end, you feel bad for him, and you see he's been humbled. It's like he shows up like in a Mexican border town in a crumpled linen suit, and he goes, "I got like 50 cents in my pocket. Can someone give me a ride home?" Something like that. And I was thinking that's what they were trying to do with this film. It's like you took Stephen Strange, who has this huge ego, but he's also incredibly talented. It's not like his ego is unjustified. It's not like he isn't like the greatest neurosurgeon in the world. And it's funny too, because you have that bit with his competitor, the guy who ends up trying to fix his hands, and that's like the second best guy in the world. And the job he did is like, look, at least you still got fingers, man. You still got hands. And Steven's looking at it going, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that scene in Tim Burton Batman. You see what I have to work with.
Yeah.
What was that one line? Like, no one could have done it better. And he's like, I could have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So there. So to that point, I guess back to your points, Dave, it's just they've always struggled with this character in the film. They decided, okay, well, we're going to start him off like he was in the comic books, but we're going to try to move him in a direction where the general moviegoer is going to like him more.
Yeah, John, your comment.
The way Tony Stark is in the comic books today, they write him more now like he's like how Robert Downey Jr. had him in the comic books, in the movies. It's like the writers started saying, oh, wow, that really works. We need to do that version of Tony Stark in the comics. It was one of those cases when they all said, this is great. We didn't know what to do with Tony Stark for so long. Let's do it this way in the comics. And now whenever you read an Iron Man comic, that's the way he comes across.
Yeah. John, your comment about how Doctor Strange was not a particularly popular character made me think of one of my all-time favorite Simpsons jokes, the 138th episode anniversary special.
Yeah.
There's a trivia question.
Right.
Which two popular Simpsons characters have died in the past year? If you guessed Dr. Marvin Monroe and Bleeding Gums Murphy, you were wrong. They were never popular.
Exactly. Well, Doctor Strange is one of those characters. He's serves a very useful part of the Marvel Universe, because in the same way that when Marvel made Guardians of the Galaxy, they go, now we have space. This is what outer space looks like in the Marvel Universe. These are what planets look like. These are what spaceships look like. These are what space stations look like. With Doctor Strange, Kevin Feige came out and said, he's like, now we have magic. We know what a character doesn't move magic in a Marvel movie. This is what they do. And all of those kaleidoscope and bendy inception type visuals were absolutely deliberately planned out. I probably more than the character in this movie of like, this is how we're going to do magic. And one of the genius things about Marvel is that they have every type of character, but they all work together. You know, there is no reason why Daredevil and Doctor Strange should be in the same room, much less the same burrow. But somehow it all works. And there's a commonality in a vocabulary, whether it was Stan Lee's style or Kevin Feige running things, that makes it all fit together. And you could literally tell any kind of story you want in the Marvel Universe because of
that. Before I finish it, I do want to give a quick look to everyone of tonight's drink on the MCU ReVU cocktails page. If you see right there on the left, that green concoction there, again, created by Tom Jetner. It's called the Not Just Tea. Not just tea with a little honey. As Thomas writes in his description, Stephen Strange's first trip to the multiverse definitely calls for a stiff drink, but perhaps a zen one as well. This riff on a martini adds a dash of absinthe, a little green fairy to guide the traveler. The Not Just Tea is made up of 2 ounces of matcha-infused vodka, 1/2 ounce honey liqueur, 1/2 ounce dry vermouth, 1/4 ounce of honey syrup, 1 dash orange bitters, and yes, a dash of absinthe. Shake with ice, strain into coupe, garnish with a lemon wheel. I did not garnish mine. I just drank that baby chilled. And oh my goodness, this thing, it's pretty good. I don't know. Did you drink yours, Dave?
I'm drinking it as we speak. I think this is Tom's best so far.
Yes. Is yours gone, Elliot?
Yes, it's almost gone.
Well, I guess
I've been letting you guys do all the talking, so it just leaves me to drink.
Just let us know when you need to lay down.
I think it's his most interesting drink so far. I mean, certainly the most interesting combination of ingredients. I mean, absinthe and matcha green tea infused vodka. It's really cool. And when I first tried it, I don't know if you feel the same way, Elliot. The different flavors in elements don't all hit you at once. Like you taste one thing and then you taste something different than something else. It's really cool.
Exactly. So for this cocktail and all the others that Tom has created, you want to go to Instagram.com/ReVU Cocktails. That's ReVU Cocktails, where you'll see images of the drinks as nicely staged by Thomas, as well as the recipes. He even has a couple instructional videos on some of the drinks that might be a little challenging for folks. Yes, some of the drinks can be a challenge because it's finding the spirits to put them together. But this one, it wasn't. I didn't seem too complex or too difficult to find everything. I think, with the exception of absinthe, I don't know where I would buy absinthe.
I think you can find absinthe anywhere.
You can get a lot of it over here.
Yeah, I was saying you're in New Orleans. Of course, you can find absinthe. There's on the corner down there.
I live next to this place called the Old Absinthe House, right? And that's like their specialty. I'm like afraid to walk in there. You know, I might never come out, but.
There's an event in Elgin called the Nightmare on Chicago Street that happens around Halloween most every year. They're bringing it back this year because it was canceled the last 2 years for COVID. But one of the bars does the traditional absinthe, and they do the whole production where they prepare it. They have the cube of ice, the cube of sugar, They have the whole thing. They set it on fire. It's really, really cool. And then when you drink that sucker, man, it hits you afterwards. So it's an experience. So review cocktails to see more, learn more. If you want to do this sort of thing, I have not talked to Thomas yet. I do not know what he has in store for the next drink, but it should be fun. Plus, at some point, he does have an Indiana Jones themed one that I asked him to do for me that incorporates Indiana Jones. But until somehow the MCU crosses over with Indy, I don't know how we're going to fit him in. We might have to throw him in a special edition of Caffeinated Comics, something like that.
We can always start a third podcast. It would only be 4 episodes.
We'll do an indie episode. Oh wait, that's right. The new indie figures, the new indie toys are going on. They'll be announcing them this in September, so we can probably do an indie themed episode.
D23 is coming up. I think there's going to be a lot of Disney announcements.
Yeah, a lot of the Indiana Jones stuff.
They just announced today that September 8th, Thor: Love and Thunder will be available on Disney Plus.
On Disney Plus, yeah, that's the soonest that they've ever offered a film after being out in theaters.
Yeah, certainly post-pandemic.
Yeah.
A Marvel movie or just any movie?
Marvel.
Okay, yeah.
Because even Lightyear didn't appear that quickly.
Launching Disney Plus. Rise of Skywalker was 2019.
I saw Lightyear on Disney Plus, but I do not understand. I do not understand the furor, the rending of garments, and the gnashing of teeth that happened over that film. I just don't. I saw it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was cute. Didn't quite fit with the overall Toy Story, mythology for me, but it was still fun. Too bad we're never going to get another one now because
it was worth not paying for.
Yeah, and people were so angry that Tim Allen wasn't doing the voice when he's busy doing the Santa Claus for who? Disney Plus. So
I think I haven't seen it yet, but I think that sort of as an outsider looking in or an outside observation, it seems like the marketing about the movie was kind of confusing as to what exactly it was. So my understanding is it was the movie. I don't know.
It was the movie that's the boys.
That's hard to explain. Lightyear is what Andy would have watched, which made him say, "I want that toy."
But he didn't actually see the movie back in 1995.
Well, yeah, in Toy Story 1, it's a TV show. So this would be like the rebooted version of that. So it's not about toys. It's not about living in a kid's room, but it is about like the Lightyear mythology. And you're right. It was a well-made movie, and it was fine. But nobody wanted to run to it.
Quick brainstorm for everyone. Again, this has nothing to do with Marvel. I'm just curious to your opinions on this. Since they did a quote-unquote Buzz Lightyear origin with a different voice, Chris Evans, if they did a Woody's Roundup movie about Woody, who would voice Woody?
Tom Hanks' brother.
Who else?
That's who does the toys for him.
Response. Who else would do it?
I have my own idea, but I'm curious what everyone else thinks.
I can't think of a young Tom Hanks. I feel like Tom Hanks can still do it.
But would it
have to be like a young Tom? I mean, I don't. Chris Evans doesn't remind me of a young Tim Allen. Just like a character you can imagine being like a version of that character, but still evoking that character.
I can't think.
What are you thinking, Dave? I know you have a name.
Well, my idea was John Krasinski.
I can see that.
I think he can do kind of like the wholesome down home thing, and he's also attached to Marvel. Did another Disney property in the same way that Chris Evans was, obviously, with Captain America when they cast him for Lightyear. Not that he would be the only choice, but that was what came to mind for me.
Well, I was thinking because Tom Hanks gets so animated and Jerry Seinfeld.
It's not like they're younger. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, right.
Well, something that getting
Yeah,
back to the movie,
naked in my boots.
something that struck me about Tom's description of the drink was he said it's a little zen, and it made me think of how one of the themes in the movie, certainly what the Ancient One is trying to teach him, is to let go and kind of realize there are things that are outside of your control. Not entirely a religious message, but definitely a spiritual message. And Susanna, getting back to what you're talking about with pain and trauma, how important is spirituality in terms of healing or feeling better or accepting your limitations?
Well, we have like this thing called it's not psychology specific. It's Buddhism, but mindfulness. But we use it a lot. It's about being present in the moment. So specifically, let's say for pain, we want to get better now. When am I going to get better? There's a control issue, right? So pain patients feel more vulnerable, and Dr. Strange is not good at that at all, right? And Christine represents his vulnerability. That's how I see the character, right? And so he has to tap into that later, right? But he has to go through his own journey. But most people want to know the when. If I do this procedure, how long will it take before I get better? Or, like obsessing or reading over and over the internet and everything about your condition. So a lot of it is, yes, being present in the moment. So in this office, right? How does your body feel in this chair? Name like 3 things that are orange in this office or something, just trying to bring people to get back into being centered in order to release some of that control or that worry about the future, right? Because when we worry about the future, it's more anxiety. When we think about the past, it tends to be more depression over anxiety. So like he has a little bit of both, right? So, or a lot of bit of both. He's mourning his past and he's worried about the future. So yes, he has to let go. What was it? Ram Dass, I think, that said like, it was a statement of a quote, like you can't feel the river if you keep trying to clench at the water. So you have to like release, you have to release your hand and let the waves, like go with the waves, and then you can feel the river. So that's how, I thought of like, the ancient one's lessons there. It's like, let go.
Yeah. Free your mind and your ass will follow.
Yeah. Kind of like, yeah, just let it happen, right? Feel the cold, right? And then the freezing cold Everest. But like accept the situation and then you're like moving forward. What is the focus? So mindfulness helps us with focus, being present, focusing. Because your mind, like whether it's trauma, whether it's pain, your mind goes everywhere. It's like scatterbrain. You can't even talk fast enough for all of the thoughts and the worries and everything that's going through your mind. It's trying to get to a place of balance, and both of those populations have a hard time regaining a sense of balance.
Yeah, and there is a feeling theme in that as well, as if you're focused on your limitations, you can't surpass your limitations. Because and when he's being trained and he's the only one that can't do this, the conjure the spells, and he says, "Well, my hands," and then the Ancient One shows him a sorcerer has one hand, and who does it perfectly. He's you can be so focused on the problem that you can't see any way around this to a different solution.
You can't even see that he has abilities because he's so focused on his lack of abilities. Hey, Tim, that's one of my friends. Hi, Tim. He says hi.
Tim says yes. And Steve, thank you for being in on our Facebook and YouTube pages, watching us on Twitch TV and on Facebook Live. Would that go to explain why you're going to have other characters that seem to be very natural using those types of magical gadgetry? Ned Leeds, we'll see in Spider-Man No Way Home. Is like he's a natural at being,
and that was actually a last-minute rewrite, and we'll get into that when we get to that point. But because No Way Home was supposed to come out after Multiverse of Madness, America Chavez was supposed to be in No Way Home, and she was the one opening the portals. And then after COVID, when everything shifted, and they said, "Oh, we got to do Spider-Man before Doctor Strange." Okay, how the hell are we going to open these portals? They came up with this whole subplot as like, well, Ned Leeds is as good as magic. And whether or not they'll follow up on that, it's kind of goes back to what we said. If you are not so focused on the problem, sometimes the solution leads you to a better place.
It's the journey. right?
Yeah.
Everything is the journey. So it's like,
Yeah.
focusing less on the end result. So this is a little bit of what I tell some patients is that my pain patients specifically is that my obsession before was marathoning. That was everything to me. And you get the runner's high. It's an addiction until I couldn't do it anymore. And I gave runners the stinky eye, just like Dr. Strange gave other doctors a stinky eye, right? I felt really badly about it. Not so much, hashtag kidding, not kidding. But think of like, okay, I still need purpose. So someone had to give me the come to Jesus talk of like, okay, you can't do this, but what else? It's like, no, this is like where all my friends are. And I lost friends. Like I could relate to this character so much, right? Because my friends at the time were running buddies, and apparently that's all we had in common. And so I had to find a new thing. And at the time, like Facebook had already launched, at that point. But I was like, okay, this is going to be the next big clinical presentation. Just wait, and sure enough, we started seeing record number, anxiety, depression, obsession, all this other stuff that was happening, like with Facebook interpretation and all this. So I was talking and talking and talking. Finally, my friends got sick of me, and they're like, are sick of my discussion. And they're like, just write a book. And I'm like, I've never written anything in my life. So I, went to a bookstore, got a book on how to write a book. No joke. That's how elementary I got, because I never wrote anything. How to find an agent, how to write a book proposal. And, I'm so lucky that, my agent, Liz Crash, picked me up. And then I found a publisher, and that was where Face Hooked was born. The first book that I wrote, Face Hooked. And had I not gotten ill, and had I not experienced chronic pain, a couple of things would have happened, right? I probably would have continued to run and run and run, and then eventually needed knee replacement surgery or destroyed my body in other ways. I would have never written that book. So I found this entirely different world. So we would tell people, similar to what Christine was telling Dr. Strange, right? Life without, medicine or surgery, whatever is, and she's like, still life. And so it's like, you can find something else. You find purpose. You still got to live. And so it's the same come to Jesus talk I have to give, like after we go through some tools, it's like, you still like, you got to find meaning, right? And if nothing else, it's like your family, your friends, your grandchildren. How do you want to live? Do you want to live miserably and make everybody else miserable? Or do you want to like find or tap into mindfulness, right? Tap into the present moment and realize the good things that you have in your life and embrace those. Just like Dr. Strange had to go through all of that in order to get to the point of reaching out to the person who represents his vulnerability, which is Christine.
Yeah, I love that metaphor too, because I really like Rachel McAdams in this. And again, knowing that where we go in the second one, she's just going to be there. She's not going to be love interest at all. I'm like, well, why is she in this story as his ex-girlfriend if they're not going to put them back together the way they usually do? And I like the fact that she represents his vulnerability, because she's almost as good as he is.
Right.
She doesn't need him. Something will come up in the second film. The theme is she says to him, you have to be the one holding the knife. And he doesn't know how to give up. Not only does he not know how to give up and think of a new solution, but he also doesn't know how to share, which will be a theme in the second film. In this film, it's more about reinventing yourself out of necessity. Like the scene where the Ancient One leaves him at the top of Mount Everest. And she's like, okay, you'll be dead in 2 minutes if you don't figure this out. And she's even worrying. There's like a little shot of her hand shaking behind her back, because no one knows if it's going to work, but he manages to figure out how to do the spell, the sling ring, because he doesn't have a choice. And sometimes you have to be backed into the fact that all your normal doors are closed to you before you can figure out the next place to go.
I'm going to bookmark this point that you're making too, because that's going to be one of the issues I take with the Doctor Strange episode that they do in What If, where Strange decides that he wants to be with Christine and he's willing to give everything up to be with her, but the universe now says no. No matter what he does, he ends up losing her. But we'll get to What If at some point down the line.
Can I just say something really quick? last time everyone gave me a hard time for how I didn't have a light on and it was slowly being
I know what you're gonna say.
dangerously close to that same territory as
I am. If
I put up like a big lamp.
Depression.
I put up a big lamp in my room just to avoid it because I knew it was going to get dark. I'm like, oh snap! Like I can have the same thing happen. That was great.
For folks who are watching the live stream, there are different levels of brightness in each of our squares. Dr. Flores has the brightest square. Dave is a little bit, more natural. John, he's got a lot of light on him, dark background. I am becoming swallowed in darkness right now. Even though I have a lamp in front of me. I don't have a ring light on me, keeping me illuminated, which is reminding me of the very first episode of Shaken Not Heard that Dave and I did, where if you go to facebook.com/Shaken Not Heard, watch that very first episode when we talk about Dr. No, and I was slowly enveloped by darkness. In this case, maybe it's Dormammu coming to claim me.
Yeah. Speaking of Shaken Not Heard, I was going to throw in a little bit of trivia. Chiwetel Ejiofor, I don't know if I'm totally pronouncing his name correctly.
Thank you.
Was rumored to play, well, there's conflicting reports, either Blofeld or the character of C, who was played by Andrew Scott in Spectre. I thought it'd been really cool to see him as Blofeld, even though Christoph Waltz was great. But I also feel, at the same time, I also feel like he was kind of underused, at least in that film. I would like to think if they had cast Chiwetel, he would have had a much more substantial role, but a lot more different take on Blofeld than we'd seen.
Well, and we have Mads Mikkelsen in this, who plays the chief in Casino Royale.
Yep.
So, Dave, you being the Bond expert, he gives such a strong performance in Casino Royale.
Mm-hmm.
What were your feelings about his character in this?
I think he was, solid enough. I think at this point, maybe Mads Mikkelsen starts to get sort of pigeonholed as playing the villain. And there is, I know we talked about before, one of the big criticisms of the MCU in general is not always having the best villains. There's maybe a couple you can name off the top of your head that are truly memorable. I wouldn't say he's necessarily one of the most memorable, but I think he's one of the, at least the better or more interesting actors to play a villain, which maybe just kind of makes me think that he was underused, or they could have done a little bit more with him. But I definitely enjoyed him more as Le Chiffre than in this film.
This is also when Mads Mikkelsen will also, like, when he did Casino Royale, that was a kind of a put you on the map moment.
He had done, was he Danish, I think?
Yeah.
He had been acting for a long time, but that was the first. Like a lot of like the actresses they get to play the women in the Bond films, a lot of them were acting in their home countries for many years, but then once you're cast in a Bond movie, then you become like a household name. Everyone knows who you are.
Right. So that's when you really explode at that point. And then you will see him. You'll see him also in Rogue One, where he plays Jalen Erso. He's going to be in Indy 5.
Yep.
The
Hannibal series he was in.
Yep.
And
he's also a lot of folks you know him for Hannibal, for the television series Hannibal, where they took the character of Hannibal Lecter and took it in a direction that, I'm telling you, I liked Mads Mikkelsen's take on Hannibal more than Anthony Hopkins now. And Anthony Hopkins won an Oscar for that character. So I give him credit for that.
Mads Mikkelsen also replaced Johnny Depp in the Fantastic Beasts film, so he's becoming one of those actors like Christopher Lee where he's touched every single franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then he also does a movie about getting drunk all the time. And it's a good movie. It's like, how can you be just consistently drunk and live life?
There's a lot of good movies about being drunk all the time. There's Lost Weekend, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah, but the Dutch make it look good. Make it look like fun, not like it's going to destroy your life.
With Nail and I, that makes drunkenness look fun.
All right. Bev, thanks for chiming in and saying hello. Really appreciate everyone who's watching us on the various channels. If you missed any episodes and you would like to go back and listen to or watch us, we do have a episode archive on the Facebook and YouTube pages. So go to facebook.com/MCU ReVU. Every episode of the MCU ReVU is posted there. If you don't have a Facebook page, you'd rather watch us on YouTube, you can go to YouTube and do a quick search for the MCU ReVU. Again, that's MCU ReVU. And you'll find we have every episode on that page except for the very first one, because I hadn't set up the YouTube page at that point. But from episode 2 forward, you can see recordings of all the video live streams, including the last episode when we talked about Captain America Civil War, when Dr. Flores joined us for the first time and gave us a lot of great insight into the characters, including one Bucky Barnes, Winter Soldier, and how he dealt with the trauma of becoming a pawn for Hydra. So, folks, you're not going to get this kind of content anywhere else. I'm telling you. You can get it. You can find a bunch of podcasts where nerds are talking about this stuff. Okay, but we got a legit psychiatrist here here. Okay, psychologist here. And she wrote a book about Wolverine, which Hugh Jackman has read. So
I really hope so.
Hey, he has. I'm putting it out in the universe.
Yes, he has. I really hope so.
Suzie. And then when you do the second edition, in advance of when they finally announce X-Men and the MCU,
right?
You'll have that. You'll have him. He'll do the forward for you.
Yes, he will.
Paul Jenkins did the forward for this edition. Maybe he'll do like an afterword for you on this one, so that way Paul can.
I'll take anything I can get.
Yeah, so Hugh Jackman, just say he'll do like a quick, boom.
I'd be like, "Hey Hugh, what's up?" Right?
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
I need to do some research with you naked on a beach to get the whole picture. Yeah.
I imagine he'll go, "Why on a beach?"
And the great part of that, it would all be tax deductible as
exactly.
Because that'd be my first thought.
Oh yeah.
If Hugh Jackman was going to meet me naked on a beach, my first thought is, how can I write this off?
I can. Yeah. I'd be like, Hugh, I have chronic pain. Please rub me where it hurts.
Remove the claws first. Right?
And I will say this: not that I ever needed convincing, but you've really convinced me to never become a marathon runner. I mean, I already have pain. I don't need to add to it. My knees already. When I was doing 5Ks, I was incapacitated afterwards.
Yeah, jogging treats your body well until it destroys it.
Until
my mom was a marathon runner in the 80s, and now she can get off the couch for about 10 minutes.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, that's why I said I might have spared myself.
I think you did.
More damage. Yeah, because I don't think I would have stopped. To be really honest, it's again an addiction, so it was a saving grace. Who knew?
I want to throw in real quick because John, you talked about this at the very beginning. We've said this a few times too about how Benedict Cumberbatch is going to have to soon fill the void that's going to be left by Robert Downey Jr. As a character, though, overall in the MCU, how would you say he fits in overall with as we know things are going to happen with this character going down. How vital is Doctor Strange now, and has he proven to be really important going down the line?
Oh yeah, I think he just gets more important with each appearance, because where he really shines is once he starts interacting with other superheroes. It's so much fun to see him with Robert Downey Jr. for the one chance we got. And in a movie that has everybody Spider-Man, he almost steals No Way Home. You know, he's the only non-Spider-Man character in a movie that's in a movie that has Willem Dafoeing it up to the extreme. He knows his character and he knows his place in it. And now that we know we're going to get 2 more Avengers movies, which, as Kevin Feige has said, they're no longer Avengers movies, they're Marvel crossover movies. So he will absolutely have a central part to play, whether or not they greenlighted Doctor Strange 3 in between. But I think he's going to become more and more important. But that does remind me, Dr. Flores, what you said about the journey, about enjoying the journey, because one of the criticism I've been hearing about the MCU ever since Endgame is, oh, that was good, but where are we going? Where are we going? What does that mean? Why? What does the multiverse mean? What's the buildup? The MCU is just treading water. They're just putting out entertaining things that aren't full of Easter eggs that lead us to the next thing. And that's what struck me when he said it's the journey. It was like, yeah, we used to enjoy each one of these as they came out. And we should be able to watch She-Hulk and enjoy it for being, 40 minutes of an enjoyable She-Hulk show. Instead of, we don't need to spend the next 2 weeks going, well, why was Mark Ruffalo in that? And where is he going to be? And what does that mean for Kang? And what does that mean for Ant-Man?
The over-analysis is what you're talking about then.
Yeah, Endgame raised the bar. Endgame raised the bar so much as being a finale to everything that people are only looking for the end. People are like, what's the next Endgame? Instead of like, we're going to give you a Moon Knight show. We'll give you a Ms. Marvel show. We'll give you a Thor movie. We'll give you a She-Hulk. And they're all enjoyable. Can't that be enough? And I feel like that's one of the themes you brought out tonight is that should be enough. And
I think that's the thing with Doctor Strange, isn't it? Can you be enough? Right. Or, can you help in other ways?
Yeah. And again, not to jump to the second movie, but that's a major theme of the movie. Are you happy? You saved the universe, but are you happy?
Right. Exactly. Well, yeah, when you have something as grand as Endgame, right, people are like, okay, well, they expect bigger and bigger and bigger. Someone would even argue, I think, like with the Joker, switching gears just a little bit for DC, Jokers, it's like different writers are trying to outdo each other in terms of the awful. Like, how awful, can they make this character? And so it gets, what was it? Arkham Asylum? Wow. Right? That was, pretty deep. And, yes. And so I can definitely see the point of, like, can we just enjoy a really nice Spider-Man story again, without, like, looking at all of the connections and where the possibility will go. And there we go again with the present moment. Can we just enjoy without trying to control?
Right.
Powerful lessons we get from these characters.
I just want to see Spider-Man fight the Kingpin now. I mean, we've got Kingpin and Spider-Man finally in MCU together.
Vincent D'Onofrio said he'll do it, but every article that ever asks an actor if they'll be in an MCU movie, they all say yes. Well, Vincent D'Onofrio's not going to be like, nah, I'll be done after Daredevil. Leave me alone.
Well, it's going to be, we know he's going to be in Born Again. He has to be, and you're not going to.
Oh, yeah, I think it's going to be about him, and that's going to be 18 episodes, which is unprecedented for Marvel. The problem with Spider-Man is, of course, Sony.
Yeah.
Is, who do they share? And they have a quid pro quo. When Spider-Man does one, that means he's got to be in somebody else's, which is the main reason Doctor Strange was in No Way Home, is that they owed the MCU a character.
Can you imagine if Spider-Man shows up in Born Again, though?
I thought Spider-Man was going to show up in Doctor Strange too. Sam Raimi was directing it, and Benedict Cumberbatch was in Spider-Man. I was like, well, that's bound to happen.
You would think.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, speaking of No Way Home, it's time for my favorite segment. Are there Marvel Legends of this?
Thank you.
The answer is always yes. And so I have my Benedict Cumberbatch. It's a little bit of a cheat because this is actually the No Way Home Benedict Cumberbatch because they've made improvements to the detail and the sculpt. So I had the one from Doctor Strange 1, but he wasn't this good. And the thing that's really lovely about him, if you're watching on the video, he has clear spells that are attached to his hands. And if you don't want them, you can remove the hand and give him another hand. but it's the hands are opaque and painted in flesh tone, but the spells you can't even pick it up on the camera, but they have all the runes and all the detail in there.
Yes.
And when Doctor Strange 2 came out, they also made a Wong like this, who I also have. But he has hair and a beard now, so it wasn't worth showing him.
Well,
there's also a Hot Toys, but I did not buy that.
And that was one of the fun things that I learned from the making of featurette of Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness, is that all his hand gestures do have a purpose, that they have a consultant on set who says what each gesture means for each spell.
Yeah, that's his job. He's the hand guy.
That is very nice detail.
Yeah, it's not. It's not even like he's a fight choreographer who does that. It's like that's his job is to be the spell hand guy.
Yeah, and they're really cool. And if you watch it, he's doing actual movements, and that way you're like, oh, then they have to coordinate the special effects with that, so it all fits in. Dave, thinking about again with this character and if he's significant in the long run, did this movie kind of make you a Doctor Strange fan?
I never disliked the character, but as I think I said from like the outset of us doing this podcast, in general, as far as reading, when it comes to reading comics, I was always more of a DC guy, specifically more Batman. I think Doctor Strange in general is still one of those characters where, because his powers and the whole sort of world he exists in is so steeped in like the mysticism and stuff like that, just my personal taste, that doesn't appeal to me too heavily. But kind of going back to my original point when we did our quick 2-minute review, I think if you had a less interesting or less charismatic actor playing him, I would be far less interested in the character. But I really like Benedict Cumberbatch. I think he really he's become sort of, the character is synonymous with him now. I think in the same way that Tony Stark / Iron Man is synonymous with Robert Downey Jr., where the average film goer or just a very casual superhero fan, they don't have the kind of preconceived notions or preconceptions about the character, because there's been a million iterations in other media outside of the comics before the MCU. With Iron Man, other than popping up in the occasional like 90s Spider-Man animated series, it's kind of a blank slate. So like John was saying, there's all that room for the actor to kind of really own that character and take ownership of him. So I enjoy the character as a film character much more now, especially in light of the 2 Avengers films he was in, and then Multiverse of Madness, more than I did after only knowing him from the first Doctor Strange film.
I just had this thought, like, how different or how much do let me get my words together. So the Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange, how much do they veer apart in terms of mysticism?
Well, with the Scarlet Witch, her powers are based, well, in the comics, okay? In the comic books, her powers are based on it being genetically built into her. She's a mutant. She can access they call it the fundamental energies of creation. Her hexes, she can play with probabilities, and over time, she just kept getting more and more powerful in the comic books. So it's essentially she can tap into the energies of creation to do what she does. Whereas with Doctor Strange, it's like, he had to learn everything, He's like,
yeah, and I think the big difference in the comics and the movie is a matter of training. Because in the movies, Wanda gets her powers from one of the Infinity Stones, but she just has them. And one of the things I think that is played out so nicely in WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness, because she doesn't have people around her like Wong and the Ancient One, she just kind of spins out. I mean, WandaVision is her spinning out, and in Multiverse of Madness, she's the villain. It's because she doesn't have that. She has natural ability, but no training.
Because after Endgame, there will be no real Avengers around. Tony's going to be gone. Steve's going to be gone. Vision is gone. And her whole family, her support group is gone. So by the time WandaVision comes around, she's on her own trying to rebuild anything she can. Yeah, and then the Darkhold gets a hold of you, and that's like being corrupted utterly.
You're like, girl, take a Percocet, right?
And it's funny too because everyone said Elizabeth Olsen has been asked about the character. She talks like she'll be back, and I'm going. It makes perfect sense. I mean, when she says no one else is ever going to use this again, use Darkhold, I was like, that doesn't mean necessarily that she's killing herself. She's just destroying that whole. I mean, again, we're getting ahead of ourselves, folks. We will talk about this next year. I'm sure we get it.
And Marvel does have a habit of having finality and then just pulling that knot back open. Iron Man 3 ends with Tony taking the arc reactor out of his chest and he blows up all his armors. And then next you see him is in Avengers 2 just flying around in their armor. They love to do these grand endings, but then the next time they need that character, they just reach into the toy box and pull them back out.
So there's no reason to believe that Wanda's dead. That she could still be out there. Just
Well, the other thing is with these Avengers movies coming, we know we're going to have a big team up, and they said it's going to end the multiverse saga, so they can bring back whoever they want as a variant. Yeah. There's rumors, which I think are fan rumors at this moment, that they could bring back an older Robert Downey Jr. just from another universe and have Tony come back in one way or another. Whether or not that'll happen, but all bets are off. Just because they've killed somebody off doesn't mean they won't come back. They've had actors that said they'll never work with Marvel again that came back. Yeah. Natalie Portman was just in Thor, and that was not going to happen for a long time. So nothing's off the table.
In comic books, no one stays dead in comics. Even when you think they're dead, they don't stay dead. Comic books and soap operas.
Yeah, the phrase used to be "No one stays dead but Bucky."
And then Bucky came back.
Yeah. And now he's been in 6 movies.
Yeah. Now it's Ben Parker, but there's been talk about bringing him back too. So. And to the point of yours, Dave, about the character of Doctor Strange and being a DC fan, I'm going to fess up. I was never a big Doctor Strange fan. If anything, Dr. Fate in the DCU is the cool one. He's always been the one that I thought was. I always thought Dr. Fate was cooler than Doctor Strange. First, had a cooler name, cooler costume, and add to that now in the movie, he's going to be played by Pierce Brosnan in the Black Adam movie. So if you ask me, they've even cast a cooler character to play him.
Another Bond.
It's gonna be awesome. That's the only reason I want to see the Black Adam movie. It's not because of the Rock. It's because of Pierce Brosnan. And I'm waiting for them. I have this feeling they're going to take the Justice Society and spin it off from this movie, and I'm going to be so there for it. So there.
Well, then, Elliot, what did you think when Marvel and DC did those crossovers and they made Doctor Strange Fate?
Cool name, but I wasn't crazy about the book. Yeah.
I have that book right here.
Yeah, there it is.
I'm trying to. There's a.
I think that's long out of print too. Anything that DC Marvel worked on together, they made very tight contracts about how long they could stay in print. So most of that stuff is hard to find.
Well, there's something. Yeah, here, Doctor Strange Fate, right there.
Yep, Doctor Strange Fate, really cool.
Some of those the designs of the amalgam, like Dark Claw, Wolverine, and Batman. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was fun.
Joker and Sabretooth together. They really.
Well, I like that with the Dark Claw, they did 2 issues. One was like the straight version. I think Jim Valenti did the artwork on that. And then they did a animated version, like a Tim version.
It's a take on the symbol, the logo of the animated series where he's got the cape.
Yeah.
Except his claws out.
Claws, yep.
That image
in that run,
in my head.
In that run, they also did Bruce Wayne Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which
that
was a really fun book.
Very cool. Did you see that, Dr. Flores, the Dark Claw, when they mishmashed Wolverine and Batman?
I didn't, but damn, I wish I did.
I'll have to send you a link because he's got the ears that flare out and the cape and the claws.
Wow.
We'll have to. We can't.
Maybe he can kick some ass.
Yeah. Oh, yep. There he is in the corner.
Next to Super Soldier, the Superman Captain America.
Yeah, definitely send me a link.
Yeah. We are not going to send you a link to any sort of torrent site where you can download the books.
No, it'll be a Wikipedia page. That's all.
It's like, let's save John's ass here.
I'm not trying to say that we're going to do that. You know, like we have links to that kind of thing. So
Never.
because you can't find the stuff in print, and even if you did, it would cost you an arm and a leg to buy it.
Right. Well, they just did, well, you remember when George Perez passed away, they did a very special print run of his Justice League versus Avengers book. And it was such a small print run that those books were going for triple the price before they were even released.
Those books are now going for more than the original books did. Yes, because they're fewer of them. They're fewer.
And the original book was a big, heavy hardcover, and this was a little trade paperback.
Yeah, I've got those. I'm lucky. I have both the original run of JLA Avengers as well as the special edition reprint hardcover with the supplemental thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, that's going way off, and we've really veered off the movie Doctor Strange. So let's bring it back with closing thoughts about the film. If there's anything that you haven't had a chance to offer yet, and about the character in general, or looking forward in the MCU, Dave.
No, I think I said pretty much everything I had to say. I enjoyed the movie more than I remembered enjoying it the first time. I think I have a better appreciation for Doctor Strange as a character more than I did going into seeing the original in theaters back in 2016. And I really do think a really big part of that is because of Benedict Cumberbatch's performance more than anything. But I do have, I'll admit, I have a little more interest in the character than I did back then.
Dr. Flores?
I'd say overall, the reason why this is one of my favorites, it's a story about humility. It's about greatness, right? Becoming humble, going through a very difficult journey, the dark night of the soul, so to speak. Sounds very dramatic, but it's kind of true. We all go through it, where we're challenged in ways that we never thought that we would be. Just to come out onto the other side and discover that, one, we were already great. We didn't need a particular thing, and that there are many facets to our personas. There's many facets to necessarily, again, looking for it, but letting go and tapping into it. Love this movie.
John?
I agree with you, Dave. I've never been the biggest Doctor Strange fan. I own one Doctor Strange book, and that's just because it reprints all of the Stan Lee, Steve Ditko stuff. I've read it. It's kind of hard to read, but fun to look at. And I would never read the book as a kid. It's not a character that rides up on my radar, but I really liked this movie, and I really like every other appearance. I really like him in Ragnarok. I really like him in No Way Home. I really like him in Infinity War and Endgame and Multiverse of Madness. I'm grateful that we have a strong character, and I think it is one of the perfect castings that Marvel has such a talent for finding. They tend to find just the right actor for the right role.
Yeah, I agree with everyone. And then moving forward, next time will be Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Talk about changing gears.
This is where I get lost, because the post-credit scene was about Thor Ragnarok, and I'm like, so Thor Ragnarok is next? I was like, no. And Civil War had a tag for Spider-Man Homecoming. We haven't done Spider-Man Homecoming. I have to look up the release dates now, and it was only like 5 years ago.
And it's funny because I do that too. And it's because every time we do this, the chronology gets conflated in my head. So yes, it will be Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is next, followed by Spider-Man Homecoming. Then comes Ragnarok. Then you would think, oh yeah, let's go into Infinity War. No, we still have Black Panther before we get into Infinity War. Again, we are going in order of release. Not quote unquote chronological order of the story. We're going in order of release. If we wanted to go in chronological, we probably would flip Black Panther and Infinity War. But no, we're not doing that. I'm not going to complicate that. And I'm actually, confession time, I have yet to see Black Panther. So this will be
You've never seen Black Panther?
I've never seen Black Panther.
I
So
watched it again last week. I don't know that I'll have to watch it again for the podcast.
I was like, maybe I'll see Wakanda Forever first. Who knows?
Wow, I am shocked.
I know. Every time I say that to people, they go,
Wait, is that
Unfriend. Yeah, that's the unfriend button right there.
block, unfriend.
Elliot, is it the only MCU movie you haven't seen, or is anything else still out there that you haven't gotten to?
Hold on. There is something. No, it was before that was Eternals, and I'm gonna tell you, I finally saw Eternals on Disney Plus, and I could have skipped it.
That'll be a short podcast.
Yeah, we did I remember we did a podcast about it way back when, before we did this.
I couldn't get my kids to watch it on Disney Plus, and I'm like, it's the only one you haven't seen. They're like, yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, no. If you want DCFS to come looking for you, you make them watch that movie. I would report you. I would report you for child endangerment and cruelty. Do you think I'm ever going to get a job working at Marvel Studios? Probably not. Talking like that. All right. Well, another great evening. I want to thank everyone who's been watching. That viewer count has stayed pretty steady, so we really do appreciate it. If you would give us a like, share, whether you're watching us on Facebook, on YouTube. If you're watching us on the YouTube channel, please give us a like and subscribe. Help us grow the channel. If I can get enough subscriptions on the YouTube channel, I can get a custom URL for the YouTube channel, just like we have for Shaken Not Heard. So please do that. Tell your friends. Feel free to comment. Comment on the page. Comments will be read. Will be seen. Check out the the Facebook page, facebook.com/MCU ReVU, where I will post a link to the cocktail, as well as the video that Tom Jetner recorded from us from his trip in Europe, in Italy, where he is currently in sunny, gorgeous Italy. I hate him. I hate him right now. Everyone's going on trips and going places, and here I am in my dark room, slowly being.
But you are the man, the myth, and the legend.
That too, yes.
That we can still read.
As beyond that, where can we find you on social media, Dr. Flores?
Most handles are Dr. Susanna Flores on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm pretty much on all of them.
Dave?
I'm on Instagram at Pinto_Noir.
Why should we follow you on Instagram?
Because of my goblin of a dog named Dexter.
I love that dog. Yes, I've met Dexter. He is a charming little bugger. All he'll do is sit there and stare at you like, you need to get over yourself.
Are you gonna be on site on Thursday?
I should be, yeah.
Because there's that canine cruise that we're going on.
I wasn't gonna go to that, but yeah.
I'm gonna bring him. I'm gonna try to bring him onto the cruise with me.
Yeah, bring him. We
Yeah.
need dogs.
Yeah.
So go make sure you follow Dave on Instagram so you can see pictures of his dog going on a river tour through Chicago.
Nice.
John?
Well, if you're not listening to this on audio, you can. And that is with the Caffeinated Comics feed. And that is anywhere you get podcasts. We've been running that for, 9 years on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. So you may be listening to that right now, but you can also go to our Facebook page, and that's where we post all things like new trailers and people that get fired from comic companies and people that are angry about what happens at comic book companies. And you can also follow me at Not On My Book on Twitter, where I write jokes, and on Instagram, where I post a lot of pictures of toys, several pictures of guitars, and a few pictures of my girlfriend.
And of course, you can follow me on Instagram at Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all platforms at Elliot Serrano with 2 L's, 2 T's, and 2 R's. As we've said before, the MCU review can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch TV. And Shaken Not Heard also will be coming back at some point. The moment there's enough bonded news to make it worth coming together. But yes, you know what? Darn it. I'm already booking a Caffeinated Comics, John, where we're going to talk about indie, and we're going to have that indie drink.
Oh, I think it needs to be a mini series to build up to the new movie.
All right, we'll do that too. We'll figure that out. And before we go, I just want to say a little something to all the angry little fanboys who thought that the Hulk was being turned into a beta male in the new She-Hulk series. Get the fuck over yourselves, okay? Get over it. Also, read the comic already. Jesus. There are days when I cannot stand comic book fans. But no, none of that here. Everyone here.
Mindfulness. Yeah.
Very good. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Flores, for joining us yet again. And for
so much
giving
fun.
us great insight. And folks, again, thank you for watching us on the live stream, whether you're watching us live, whether you're watching us as part of the video archive, whether you're listening to us on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you again next time.